All right, folks, it just continually, as I said earlier, it just keeps getting better and better and better. Our next guest is known professionally as Cha-Cha. You've been seeing her all morning. She's a pioneer in professional auto racing. She is a living legend, and she's the first lady to receive a license from the NHRA to drive Top Fuel Dragster. Our guest is obviously Shirley Muldowney. Shirley, welcome to Horsepower for an Hour.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
It is great to have you on board. You know, describe for us and for our listeners, not only here but elsewhere abroad, what was it like in the early days? Take us back. You come in as a young lady. NHRA was not necessarily fond of having you on board. They thought that it was going to be a detriment. And then they started seeing the stands fill up. Obviously, it was another story. Take us back and tell us what happened.
Well, kind of, it started a bit earlier than that back in the 60s. And it went from NHRA thinking that, oh, God, a woman gets hurt, that's going to be some bad publicity. And a series of phone calls, a little bit of a fight, and a little bit of, stomping my feet. But they did let me into, Steve Gibbs actually let me into my first national event in 1967. It may have been 67. And then in 1970, I went to the U.S. Nationals with my dual-engine car, AA gas dragster, two blown Chevrolets coupled together. Very novel, but I didn't look at it as a novelty. I looked at it as, a competitive race car. We did miss the show by a couple 100ths of a second, but Wally Parks and a number of the big wigs back then in the old regime realized that, oh my God, this girl is going to sell tickets. That was their mindset. And from that time on, the doors were thrown wide open, and they allowed me to come anytime I wanted to, when I could afford to. And I was simply match racing a lot in the 70s, and then I went to Funny Car in 71, and that was and I came to my first match race in Southern California and stole all the newspapers, front page of the sports section in every newspaper in Southern California, and that was the beginning of a wonderful thing for me.
Folks, if you're just joining us, we're speaking with Shirley Muldowney. We are on Horsepower for an Hour on News Talk 1520 KVTA. It is great to have her on board. Shirley, I want to take you back to a time that probably isn't as memorable as you would like, but it's the 1984 accident you had where you got a little banged up. In fact, your hands, your legs, your pelvis were pretty well injured. You were out, I think, for 18 or 20 months. Talk to us about that time in your life.
Oh, it was the only time I've been drag racing. I went to my first drag strip in 1958, so that'll give you an idea about how old I am. And out of all those 50 years, I got on my head one time, got upside down, and it was at big speed, 250. It was at a bad place in the lights and at a track where the guardrail ended in the lights. And the NHRA realized that, oh, we've missed the boat. And that was the beginning of guardrail from stem to stern. It was the beginning of the waiver. You signed your life away when you went in the pits and raced your cars. But all of the changes that they made were good changes, and for the betterment of the sport. I took a beating, and I think because of the fact I paid attention to all my safety gear all the time, regardless if it was a national event or a match race, and the fact that God was looking down on me. I took a terrible ride, but I came through with no head injuries, but a lot of fractures, big time fractures. And I spent 2 months in the Montreal General Hospital, and don't ever think that those Canadians don't know what they're doing, because they do. They saved my legs, and then I got to Detroit, and that's when I ran into trouble. There was a Detroit doctor that was a bonehead. But from then, I went to Dr. Trammell in Indianapolis, the Indy 500 doctor, and 6 months later, I still had the risk of losing a leg from the knee down, so I was in deep trouble. And Terry Trammell really saved me to the point where 18 months later, I was back in a race car, and I drove for 19 more years. The cockpit was designed quite differently. I had wound up with a fused ankle, so the the clutch pedal was quite a different configuration. But other than that, it was like I had never left the cockpit. It was a blessing. If the fused ankle had been reversed and it was the right leg, I would have no longer would have had the motion of a throttle. So just picture yourself, left foot on the throttle and right foot on the clutch. Try it. It would be almost impossible because you're a creature of habit. So anyhow, as a result of that accident, so many things changed. Goodyear developed the front tire, 320 plus mile per hour proven. So the parts failure, what happened to me would never happen to another racer. And just everyone backed me. The fans were there for me. The racers were there for me. It just was a day I'd like to forget. And I know what it is to not be able to stand in the shower for 18 months. After that, you have to wash up in a bowl. But after that, whenever I got into a hotel, I had nothing against taking 45-minute showers and doing it 4 times a day because it felt so good.
We had John Force on our program a few months back, and he mentioned the accident that you were in when he was talking about his 2007 crash in Texas, and he referenced your crash. I mean, kudos to you. I mean, Glenn, this is just a treat to have her on board.
There you are, Glenn.
Absolutely. Every time we bring somebody up on stage here, Donnie, we're here cruising it for the Cure. This is just a great show that we're at. We have talked to not just people that are celebrities in the industry, but we're talking to legends. These folks have been through so much in their lifetime. They've been inspirations for so many people, but especially to have Shirley Muldowney here on stage right next to us, Donnie, is such an honor. But what's so cool too is, Shirley, back in your day, not very many women in the industry, but today there are women in the industry, and we even see, looking right next to us over here, we have little drags. The girls are getting into the drags. It's such a treat to see women getting involved with this sport.
Yeah, well, these are our aspiring Top Fuel drivers, and I really think a lot of the junior dragster program, even more so than I would look at a young lady jumping in an alcohol car or jumping right into a Top Fuel car with no previous experience. So again, these little cars here, I don't think I would drive one, truthfully, because it's not it's not something that I am familiar with. But they will graduate on up through the ranks, do it the right way, and hopefully they'll get their shot at it. Now it's a pretty big money pit. It's a hard thing to go out there and achieve. If you see, a national event win or hopefully a championship someday. It's been, I won my last championship in '82. Now how many? Do the math. I'm not the greatest in math, but that's a lot of years, and we have yet to have a woman world champion follow suit, except Angel, and she did it on the motorcycle.
Motorcycle, correct.
Yeah, and very impressive. I mean, just a superstar in my book. But I'd like to see a woman go out there, and I'm not a big fan of the countdown. I think it's kind of like a crapshoot. It's kind of like a backdoor, easy way to get to a championship. It's very exciting. And it's very captivating at the last 2 races of the year, but it's hard to see a driver go through the 3/4 of the year and race his heart out and be number 1, and then here comes Indy, and it was all for naught. It's all thrown out, like thrown in the waste can, and you start from scratch for the next 6 races. That's not my way of winning a world championship. It's just, but they had to follow NASCAR, and we don't need to mimic NASCAR because drag racing stands on its own.
Absolutely.
It stands on its own. There is no comparison. So anyhow, that's one of the things that's kind of like a little bit of I question it, but anyone that gets out there and runs the numbers consistently and holds up under the heat and the strain, and the hardest part is finding the funding, and I don't see any of the ladies out there today having to deal with that.
Who's your favorite female driver right now?
I think the best I've ever seen in my lifetime, female, and I think the best I will ever see is probably Erica Enders. She's top of the line.
We spoke to Erica a few weeks back, actually a couple months. The time goes by so quickly. We were actually the big first of the year. We were out at Pomona, And tell me, what do you think of Alexis DeJoria and the Force girl?
Well, I don't really know the Force daughters enough to, other than hello. I think they've pretty much had, an easy go of it. Dad's provided the best cars, the best people, well, at least as good as the best out there, and they've pretty much had, an easy ride. But that's good. I'm not suggesting that everybody needs to, claw their way to the top. Hopefully those days are over. Alexis, I think she's very personable. She's very nice. It was a hello, how are you? Nice to meet you. You're my hero. That sort of thing, and that's all very complimentary. But, Daddy's got a lot of money, and he's going to find his way to get her to the winner's circle, one way or the other, and through no fault of her own. She's trying her best, and I wish her all the best.
Folks, if you're just tuning in, you're listening to Horsepower for an Hour on News Talk 1520 KVTA, also in the Midwest on WCSI News Talk 1010, and in the eastern side of the country, we are on your FM dial 100.7 WXMR, also in the Lake Tahoe area, KTHO 96.1 on your classic rock station, or AM 590. We've been speaking with Shirley Muldowney. Folks, let's get a big round of applause for Shirley Muldowney. She is absolutely wonderful. Big thanks to Prolong for making this happen, for making this possible, for allowing us to be out here today. Shirley, it has been nothing short of a treat having you on board. I look forward to having you in studio with us at some point in the future.
That would be
wonderful. Forward to having you back. If you do run again, I'm going to be right there trackside with you. How's that?
Please, just be one of my sit in the cheering section, because I think that's going to be a pretty big cheering section.
Absolutely.
I'm going to go so far as to say that. I would myself like to thank a couple people for having me here. Certainly Prolong. They went over and above, beyond what they needed to do to make my weekend great, comfortable, and as pleasant as it could possibly be. And without Dave and Twyla Mandela, who reconstructed my 77 World Championship car, without them, they put this whole thing together for me. I can't thank them enough. It's been great.